we have circulated a call of abstract earlier this year, and then we have collected a selection of good abstract to be presented here. So now maybe I can invite Professor Jiro Kokoro to share with us our initial idea of the call for abstract and also the goal of today's presentation. Jiro, please.
Thank you, Cherry. As Dave mentioned earlier, Cyber Civilization Research Center started 4 years ago with the recognition that we should think of it we should think of the technology in much broader context. That to be aware that the technology is the impact of technology is so significant. We should think of this from civilizational context. That perhaps we are at the dawn of a new civilization, and thinking of that really requires thinking about the new societal structure as well as the technological structure. And so entering into our fourth year, we decided that we really need to solicit a lot of our wisdom from around the world to this issue, and called upon the community to submit abstracts. And we have been very fortunate, have very high quality abstracts, we believe. Which we think will stimulate discussion. Dave, Cherry, and I, and with the help of June, we've been trying to categorize a little bit to give structure. There are 3 broad areas that we'll be talking about from now. In section 1, we'll be talking about the governance of cyberspace. We are really starting to look at, Metaverse and other kinds of things, really starting to see new world order in the cyberspace, but how should that be governed? The second, there was a second group of papers that reflect, I think, the very strong interest in around healthcare and in cyberspace. So that will be section 2. That will be coordinated by who? Dave. And then there were another set of papers that were very strongly interested in around the issues of trust, which clearly is. It wasn't in Mike's list, but that's probably one of the critical elements in the creation of cyber civilization. So from now we'll be hearing from speakers that have submitted the abstracts and have discussions around that, what they have to say. Can I go on to go into my session, Jerry? Yeah, okay. So we'll have papers from Kim and Michael McDonald from Australia, co-founders of CEO of That World Integration. We have Professor Rika Kowatai from Keio University. We also have Professor Kenji Saito from Waseda, and we have Kelsey Nevin, a researcher from the Center for Automated Decision Making and Society. Great. So with that, let me first invite Kim and Michael. You have 8 minutes. No more than that. Okay, please. And to leave room for discussion.
Great. So good morning, everyone, and greetings from Sydney, Australia. We are extremely pleased and honored to have been invited to participate in today's event and to give you a brief overview of the paper we submitted. Michael and I are the co-founders of Flat World Integration, which is home to Flat World data integration, sharing, and governance platform. And speaking to Joy's point, we are a liberal arts and a technical founder who've come together to do this. And one of our initial inspirations for the technology that we created was Tom Friedman's The World is Flat. And one of the book's key themes was the flattening of the world's economy and the imperative for countries, companies, governments, and individuals to come together and connect if they wanted to prosper in the upcoming digital revolution. That triggered a light bulb moment for us. In fact, it was more of a lightning bolt. And we knew that to be successful, not only, as Mike mentioned, did there have to be no harm done, but there had to be, from Sydney to Stockholm, from Vancouver to Vanuatu, from Kyoto to Kiribati, there had to be vendor neutral, platform agnostic, trusted tier 1 technology available at tier 1 and all cost and capability levels. So the vast majority of our work over the last 12 years has been taking that hypothesis of leveling the digital playing field and making it a reality for the new cyber civilization. Key to this was enabling the creation and control of data ecosystems while ensuring the democratization of data and an equitable data network. What this means is enabling cyber citizens to participate in the digital economy without the need to have high-level digital skills or the power of large multinationals, while still ensuring that their rights, their essentially data sovereignty are secure and not subject to an ever-present cycle of surveillance capitalism. So this digital New Deal means a data owner has control over their personal and sensitive data, and that said data can, with their permission, be securely shared and utilized without the considerable costs and delivery times currently in place. So with the last 5 minutes, Michael, I'm going to hand over to you to explain the architectural requirements necessary to make this possible, the how to do this now.
Okay. So I'll just give some context to the problem we solved. I've dealt with data at scale since very early 2000s, dealing with Shell and all the issues around sharing essentially very sensitive data at scale. I've also dealt with the Defence Force, healthcare, and a bunch of other industries like telco. So data is a valuable asset and needs to have a lot of controls around that. And if it doesn't, basically it impedes business. The whole idea behind our technology is obviously to enable that capability so everybody is dealt in, not just the very big companies. I've done a lot of big projects, like I said, around this. And the one thing that generally is true is we don't agree on anything, except for pretty much we'll use the web, that's it. Everybody has their own standards, their own ontologies, different industries talk about things differently, even things down to document formats. One could be JSON, one could be XML, one could be docx or PDFs. So what I've seen fundamentally solving these problems, or trying to solve these problems, is tons of technical tools, but it is actually far more than a technical problem, as we've already alluded to. It really is a Gordian knot of a whole bunch of interrelated requirements, and that's everything from the technical requirements right through to legislation, jurisdictional issues, data security, data sovereignty, and data ownership and permissions. So at the moment, we don't have any consistent approach to that. Doesn't matter what industry you're talking about or what country, it really depends on the situation. What we've got there is potentially tens of thousands of failure points just for simple things like data security, let alone being able to manage this at scale. So we redefine the problem space as problem friction. So if we don't solve all these problems at once, it's not going to work. You'll get kind of a solution to share some files, but there's no governance over that. What about the data security? Can we audit that independently third-party way? So what we did there was recast the problem. Is there some way we can actually appreciate this is the reality of the situation? Can we come up with a new way of trying to frame this problem in a way that can be solved with practical technology? So we went through tens of thousands of thought experiments and went through the industry, different countries, looking for different ways of solving this problem. And it really came down to solving this problem using a fundamentally new architecture. We rethought everything from the ground up, and we went through, like I said, many different iterations. And essentially what we came up with was a conceptual technology called just a data presentation layer, which in practical reality, it's just a new type of web server. Think of it more like a data server, but it runs at the web endpoints. The whole idea behind this, though, is empowerment, enablement at scale in very complex, decentralized and multi-jurisdictional environments. So this means the average citizen can use the technology, as can tier ones, as can governments, and everybody's invited with permission to the data ecosystems. And this architecture will essentially allow people to play and play by the rules. To make this work in terms of, I'll just explain the technology very briefly, is we had to say that we have to remove all the points of friction. This comes from right from data format friction, right through to permission friction, right through to trust friction. So looking from all those different dimensions, we came up with this technology stack, which does two things. It integrates seamlessly into the existing pipelines of technology providers. It also empowers end users and data users now, which currently aren't invited, and also allows, with permission, legislation or oversight or independent auditors to see what is going on, to obviously verify and validate that the rules are being adhered to. So conceptually what we do, we allow you to onboard your data, doesn't matter what format it is. We allow you then to containerize it, so think of it like containers on a ship. This container is independently encrypted on your behalf. Then you define who you want to share it with and to what level you want to share that data to and what fields you want to share them, can they read, write, update, and to a very, very granular level. The technology then handles actually the transmission of that encrypted containerized data across to the data receiver. This integrates seamlessly with digital identities, third-party authentication platforms, could be LDAP, all that sort of stuff. So it's designed to fit into very complex environments. But what it manages essentially is that onboarding of data, the secure sharing of it, and also allowing that whole ecosystem to work seamlessly. So I might put the data in JSON, but I might want to extract it as Excel. On top of that, I want to see everything that's happening to my data in real time. The technology provides all that real-time update and also real-time mitigation if anything happens, i.e. data breach and or reactive mitigation if we need to see who did what to what data if we find there's a data breach later. So with that, I'll hand back across to Kim.
My
wife,
So thank you very much for your time. We look forward to answering any questions. And additionally, if you'd like to schedule a half-an-hour talk with us, we'd be very happy to talk through our approach and show you the technology in action. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation of very, very clearly defined social intent and backed by architecture. And I invite people to throwing questions to them, either technical or societal. So, with that, let me invite the second speaker, Professor Rika Kawatai, to talk about digital trade and national security.
Thank you very much, Professor Kokuyo. I'm honored to have this opportunity to speak to you about the digital trade and national security. I teach administrative law at Keio Law School, and my area of research is foreign direct investment regulation. So I've been focusing on the laws that apply to Japan, domestic laws. This means I have never been involved with the laws as it pertains to cybersecurity, but even I can no longer remain uninvolved with cyberspace to carry on my research. So I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about what lies at the foundation of digital trade. So digital trade, there is no uniform global definition of what digital trade is, but the OECD definition is gaining ground. So it's digitally enabled transactions of trading goods and services that can either be digitally or physically delivered and that involve consumers, firms, and governments. So according to this, digital trade includes the buying and selling of goods over the internet, as well as online hotel reservations and services provided through online platforms, such as music streaming services. And the survey by the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry shows that the market for digital trade is expanding. So B2C, okay, here it is. B2C stands for, as you know, business to consumer, And this table shows that the merchandising sector and digital sector, such as online games, are growing fast. The reason for the drop in the services sector numbers is the loss of travel opportunities due to COVID-19, which is proportional to the growth in the other two sectors. Okay. So there are no rules in place specifically for digital trade at this time. So it's possible to apply the existing rules of the WTO to digital trade, but the existing rules do not always cover the exchange of data, which is the characteristics of digital trade. So moves toward rulemaking have accelerated since a number of countries issued a joint statement in 2019. And as shown in the slide, it was announced last December that the negotiations would be completed by the end of this year. However, the fact is that there are differences in the approaches taken by countries regarding digital trade. So in the United States, the private sector has a huge influence in making rules and rules around data, given the presence of IT platforms like GAFA. By contrast, EU formulated general data protection regulation in 2016, taking an approach to rulemaking that focuses on individuals rather than businesses. And in China, the government takes the lead on data management. So efforts will continue to be made to close the gaps, perhaps to avoid fragmentation discussed earlier. But what about Japan? So at the World Economic Forum annual meeting in January 2019, then Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced Japan's concept of data free flow with trust, DFFT. This is an attempt to balance the security of data with the free and open flow of data in shaping the rules of digital trade. So with the understanding that the free flow of data is facilitated when privacy and intellectual property are secured, the point is with trust, the T. So in parallel with the WTO rulemaking, Japan signed the Japan-US Digital Trade Agreement in January 2020, which aims to create a new trade blocks through the free distribution of data. So this is a realization of DFFT, and core provisions are shown in the slide. So while with trust, the last three are particularly relevant. And this agreement, like other trade agreements, has a provision for a security exception. So the history of the national security exception provision is long. It goes back a long time, and it was already established in the GATT in 1947. The Japan-US Digital Trade Agreement includes it in Article 4. The purpose of the DFFT would be undermined if these provisions were to be applied too often. And in 2021, last year, Japan's ruling party made a proposal on the importance of economic security. The Kishida administration, which took over from the Abe administration, has also made economic security a priority. So last month, he announced in his policy speech that he will take on the enactment of a new legislation on economic security. And we tend to see national security issues as military issues, but national security and economy are so closely linked, as can be seen from the idea of economic statecraft, in which a nation uses economic means to exert influence over the other nations in order to pursue its strategic goals. So in the United States, there is a law that gives the president the power to stop investments that have security impacts. So when the law was established, there was a lot of investment in the high-tech industry, especially from Japan in late 1980s, and the law was introduced to prevent defense technology from going abroad. And after 9/11, the perspective of homeland security was added to the concept of security in order to maintain critical infrastructure. And today, data is already being considered as a national security issue, and there is a strict screening process for foreign investors. And these are two of the most recent examples of presidential orders stopping foreign investors from taking over data-related companies. The first case is the planned acquisition of Stay in Touch, American developer of hotel booking apps. And the second case is the acquisition of TikTok. So both of these provide services that involve the collection of user data. So bringing up national security can act as a constraint on free trade. So it does do harm. I understand that. However, for a country, I believe the national security is the foundation of free trade and can be likened to an operating system in a computer. So on top of that national security, the operating system, various transactions such as digital trade and investment, which can be likened to apps, are being developed. So in other words, there may be restrictions on digital trade from the perspective of security. However, this is not something that should be looked at from the perspective of economic rationality, but rather as an assumption to begin with. So of course, we need to be very careful not to let it be used to justify gaining national interests rather than national security. So at the G7 Digital and Economic Ministers meeting in 2021, a consensus was formed on a roadmap for cooperation on DFFT. So the roadmap includes these 4 points. And as the G7 is scheduled to be held in Japan in 2023, the movement to establish the DFFT as an international system will hopefully to accelerate. So I hope that Japan-US Digital Trade Agreement will become the model for WTO rules by better harmonizing the policies of economic security and the promotion of digital trade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This talk was directly relevant to the fragmentation issue we've been talking about previously, and there's a lot to talk about surrounding the interest versus security, the personal interest versus the national interest, and so this is multidimensional. There's a lot to talk about.
It's very complicated. Yes, I haven't come up with a good solution yet.
Well, thank you very much. I hope we'll have time to discuss a bit more on these critical issues. Thank you. The third speaker is Professor Kenji Saito from Waseda University, a path to meta-nature.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm glad to be here to talk about a path to meta-nature, automated environment where even pencils grow on a tree. So these slides are also available at the speaker deck, and my account is KS91. So I'm Kenji Saito. I'm a professor at Waseda University. I started as a computer scientist, and I hope I still am. And my research interests include P2P, digital currencies, and internet and society in general. So to put it briefly, machines and algorithms will continue to replace even many of the intellectual activities considered to be the mainstay of human abilities. Through the expansion of automation and social autonomy, a new natural environment will emerge in which even pencils grow on a tree, metaphorically speaking. We call this new environment meta-nature, in which we will stop being consumers and the realities, desires, and values of many people will change. So, today, even a single pencil is produced through the involvement of many people and the division of labor. There's a very good essay depicting that in 1958, written by Reed, and it's called I Pencil. It's a monologue of a pencil, and describing that so many people are involved in the manufacturing of even a single pencil, and no one single person knows the whole picture. So the two main points of the above essay may be the economy of a division of labor is not controlled by a central authority, which allows for creativity and productivity to meet the needs of people. And this is why specialization is the cornerstone of our freedom. But wait a minute, the Buckminster Fuller in his operating manual for Spaceship Earth in 1969 says, specialization is in fact only a fancy form of slavery. And I agree, and I will get to that point in a short while. In addition, the division of labor or specialization has made our society vulnerable to so-called natural disasters. I call it so-called natural disaster because natural disaster doesn't exist. It's a natural phenomena and social vulnerability. It's a product of natural phenomena and social vulnerability. For example, earthquakes and climate change has caused a big power outage in Japan, in Hokkaido and Chiba in recent years. And that's the reason. The reason is that the electricity is produced in a centric place, and its electricity is conveyed to remote places, and that is vulnerable to natural phenomena like earthquake and big typhoons. So maybe it's better to design the electricity infrastructure so that the every household has a solar panel or wind turbines, something like that, so that the electricity can be distributedly produced and used in a local area. So I will get to the point about slavery. We are all slavery in a monetary economy, and this is a triangle between among the specialization, money, and the state. And those three appeared in human history at around the same time, and there's the reason. And specialization means that there is something you cannot do, so that you have to obtain some goods or services from using the other people's expertise, and you need money. Money is an efficient way of obtaining goods or service from other parties. And so the reason of existence of money is a specialization. So specialization supports existence of money. And money supports existence of the state because money is basically issued by the state, and it's financed to the market, and it returns as a taxes to the state, and in which the state can force people to work for the state or for the market, and so the state can control in a way people by basically controlling the distribution of foods, and so the state is supported, the money supports the state. And the state supports specialization because it provides security. And before the appearance of this triangle, everyone is like omnipotent in a hunter-gatherer society. They would fear to obtain expertise because it will decrease their chances of survival because there's something they cannot do. But if the state provides security, then they can obtain their expertise. So the state supports specialization. So these supporting interdependent relations supported our society, but the digital transformation is destroying this structure. And especially if the digital transformation is applied to a specialization, then people are empowered by digital technology, and there will be more things they can do. So it will become more like a state of unspecialization. And what happens? Let me talk about it in a tetrad. It's a set of 4 questions. It was invented by media scientist McLuhan. And let us start with this part here. This part here says domination and obedience, hierarchy, and profit maximization. Those are actually the properties of the pre-human existence, like apes, monkeys, something like that, like chimpanzees and Japanese monkeys. But these features were made obsolete by the appearance of a human being and the creation of a hunter-gatherer society, which makes the equality a very important feature. And so the trust-sharing gift economy, omnipotence, was supported by hunter-gatherer society, and these were made obsolete. But here comes the money, and money promotes exchange, consumption, saving interest, and the specialization that, like I said, and the agriculture and industrial society. This made these features of a hunter-gatherer society obsolete, and In turn, these made these features of so-called monkey society are more apparent. So these are the features of modern society, and as the money promotes exchange and consumption, saving and investment, the opposite effects will appear, like economic gaps, exploitation, bankruptcy, and also bullshit jobs. It's a meaningless job, like non-essential works. And the DAO means decentralized autonomous organizations. So the new technology can also change this situation of promoting this feature and the reversing into something different, instead promoting these features, hunter-gatherer society. So maybe the digital transformation will promote the hunter-gatherer society in a new form. This is the concept of meta-nature in a really simple diagram. So from the 19th to 20th century, we have completed a society so that it is like someone says turn on the light and someone says okay and operates the machine to turn on the light. So the functionality of the society was provided by the division of labor. But today, if I say turn on the light, machine will say okay and machine turns on the light. So the functionality of the society may be now going to be supported by the network of machines and algorithms. And since nature for us is automated, so the technological and social environment will gradually change into something semantically similar to the natural environment. That's why we call this new environment meta-nature. So this is the architectural change. Today, as a computer scientist, we think everything as a metaphor of computers. So the Earth is a hardware, and what we want to do is to do business in a broad sense and its application, and we are users. So we need something like an operating system that coordinates and manages the uses of resources. And today it's a financial system, and it's not good as an operating system because what it does is let people with more financial assets to use more resources. That's not a good way of coordinating the usage of resources. So what's happening today is like creating an Earth-scale operating system to for better coordination of resources usage. And I think that the blockchain and the smart contract, things like that, is a very early prototype of Earth-scale OS. And in the future, the business and Earth-scale OS will merge to make a meta-nature environment, which is an automated environment for human. And we have passed to meta-nature. It's about, we think in a backcasting way. The premise is that decentralization of society will precede the attainment of perfect level of automation because that would be more difficult. So meta-nature is like version 3, and we have a control. We have a perfect level automation, and before that, we have a meta-nature with human agents, like people helping one another, like the future Japan Manekineko. If you know the short story, it's people helping one another by the suggestion by the portable artificial intelligence, networked artificial intelligence devices. And before that, sorry, and this society, we have, we will witness the decreasing of the monetary economy effects. And before that, we have a, automation during the monetary economy. So which I would call a mashup organization, and organization services are programmable by combining components. And today we have, one step before, and we have like DAO, but it's a false DAO. It's a false decentralized autonomous organization. It's like a joint stock company on a blockchain, and Metaverse and things like that. This may be an elementary technology to achieve these changes, but still we are thinking in a 20th century way. So we think something that we make things like joint stock company on blockchain. So as a conclusion, in the second half of the century, pencils may grow on a tree. And on the other hand, iPencil, the essay, would remain correct in many aspects because no one can make a pencil or its equivalent alone. And we don't understand everything. So the effort to understand everything in the universe will continue as a science, and the creativity and the productivity will be unleashed because we are not controlled by a central authority. However, freedom will not come from specialization, but from omnipotence. So we will live through the process of blowing up the monetary economy, and if it doesn't blow up, I think it will only reinforce slavery. And based on this premise, we will be able to realize changes in the way a social order is formed and in finance. And finance is basically circulating tokens with the power to drive manpower, and it will be unnecessary to drive manpower because everything will be automated. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, Cyber Civilization Research Center was started with the awareness that we should really rethink many things that we have been taking for granted. And I mean, many of the institutional setting is based on the industrial economy that you know, since the Industrial Revolution, and probably we are about reaching a time when we have to rethink from the fundamental structures. So thank you very much, Saito-san. Now let me invite Kelsey Nabin from RMIT University to talk about the designing Metaverse.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Just let me share my screen.
Yes, please.
Okay, is that working for everyone? Yes, yes, thank you so much. All right, pleasure to be here. I'll jump straight into it, and I'm very grateful to the previous speaker for pointing to some of these sort of wide scope topics, including decentralized autonomous organizations and the metaverse. For context, I'm an ethnographer of decentralized technologies. So a lot of my fieldwork takes place online in cryptocurrency communities, blockchain and other kind of decentralized protocol communities, where I'm trying to understand what these people are trying to build and why, and I guess what kind of cyber civilization they're striving towards. And these worlds have very interesting social and policy consequences as well, which I'm very interested in. And so this extended abstract and conversation is about the metaverse, and it's an ethnography of a project I undertook called Kongland, which is aiming to be a crypto state or their own decentralized polity through the institutional design, so governance, as well as manufacturing of hardware through open chips. So I know there's a lot of concepts going on. I want to take a step back and kind of start with this idea of the metaverse, which has sort of been around mainstream commentary, especially over the past couple of months with Facebook's announcement of Meta. And so what this gives us is two competing visions of open, decentralized, participatory networks in which hardware devices such as virtual reality and augmented reality, like the kind of glasses. Facebook has an agreement with Ray-Ban where you have sort of glasses where you see into sort of digital worlds. So there's one vision for yes, an open sort of augmented future, and then one which would be closed and privatized and go very much down the same direction as existing sort of Web 2 internet platforms. And I guess people's concern with this is the idea of the metaverse is greater interlinking between the digital and the physical, and it combines a number of concepts that we've already seen through internet platforms. So, you know, commerce as well as social networks, as well as sort of work and recreation. And so what's happening in decentralized technology communities is largely driven by an ideology that comes out of this subculture called the cypherpunks that believed that, or still believe that, cryptography is a key to sort of freedom and autonomy and self-determination. And so the fundamental cornerstone when we talk about decentralized technologies is cryptographically enabled networks. But now the development of these worlds has gone so far that it's not necessarily ideologically tied to the cypherpunks or libertarianism or any of those themes, but it's really around participatory networks. And so this is across a number of dimensions. It's architecturally in terms of the design of the infrastructure. So distributed computing, we already heard about distributed data storage or processing in that sense. It's also distributed in terms of governance. So there's a lot of experimentation in what is called decentralized autonomous organizations. And what these are is really a way of having self-executing institutional rules where people rely on incentivization and values alignment through digital tokens and or software code to enforce those rules rather than relying on traditional kind of sovereign nation state law. So it's quite a grandiose and ambitious concept. And I guess the argument is there's no truly autonomous organizations as of yet, but it's a very active area of experimentation and investment. And what this all centers around is this kind of political philosophy of public goods. So scholars have pointed especially to the Ethereum blockchain ecosystem as one that is focused on private provisioning of public goods through these kind of participatory decentralized infrastructures rather than the state doing so. And so where this takes us in terms of the detail of Kongland, this particular project, it's a group of individuals that have minted a token called Citizen Token. And now they're trying to decide how to structure and govern their autonomous polity. And the aim of this particular project is to provision open microchips. So what they've recognized is that the metaverse and the future of digital networks comes down to the hardware level. And they're trying to provision these open chips as cheaply as possible to enable people to build on top of them. And so this has the kind of hardware infrastructure layer, the software layer, as well as the governance layer. And the ambition of this particular project is, I guess, innovating on all of these at once, in a sense. And so they've already got projects building on top of them, all kinds of different things, from connecting artworks in the real world to digital tokens or NFTs, non-fungible tokens, connecting merchandise such as clothing and these kinds of things to some more sort of playful tools built on this idea of a crypto state, such as passports. So you have your microchip enabled passport that gives you access to, you know, special places in real life events, or you know, people are starting to organize events which only those with kind of verified ownership of a passport can enter. And so it's really interesting when it comes back to the social and policy consequences of decentralized infrastructures in terms of what kind of world is being created, and building off the kind of anthropological literature on the impacts of technology on society and the I guess extractivism or exploitation of algorithmic systems. I think decentralized infrastructures are a very important subject of scholarly inquiry to try and understand alternative ideologies as well as technological solutions to the kind of direction of the privatized web. And so I'll leave it there and try to keep to time. And if there's any questions, I'd love to engage further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is indeed a cutting front, you know, cutting edge front line with a lot of and just one example is NFT, but a lot of effort at creating sort of a distributed structure in the world, and how that can be managed is a big issue. Thank you very much for your cooperation. We have 15 minutes. It's kind of a tricky thing, but I think we can have a meaningful discussion by referring to Professor Watai's framework, which was interesting in the sense that not only so that there is the question is, I mean, can there be an architecture that addresses interests of individuals versus national? But again, but in addition to that, the distinction that Professor Watai made was interest, I mean, security versus interest. And of course, on one hand, we want a world where individuals can exercise their freedom while being protected from breach or security threats. And of course, there's another dimension where the nation states are trying to secure security versus economic prosperity, and of course the WTO kinds of arrangements is regulating national governments to pursue economic interests, selfish economic interests. But then there's a huge another dimension coming in the name of national security, and DFFT, for example, is easy to say but very hard to implement. And of course, in the crypto world, we would like to free people from some of the conventional constraints, that kinds of constraints that Kenji Saito was mentioning. But then how that world can be governed is another big issue that we need to address. So I think we're going to run out of time when people respond to this question. But so may I invite Professor Watai to address the question first, and can you keep it to like 90 seconds?
Thank you. It's a difficult task. It was very interesting to listen to everyone's presentation, and I can only think about this from a legal perspective. But from the first presentation, I think it's the matter of who owns data, and from the pencils grown on a tree situation, I think it's a matter of supply chain. So I heard that it was like reconfiguring of the supply chain. So is there a possibility of risk in the supply chain? And with the last presentation, I'm not an expert on this area, but in the at least under the Japanese law, what you can own things. So what happens when you are deprived of your property in a virtual space? Or if I sell tickets and do a do a show in a virtual Shibuya crossing, and if I get ticket rewards, do I have to pay to the Shibuya World for that sort of things? So I think the issue is who owns the data and who has jurisdiction over them, over the cyberspace. Yes, and I was wondering to hear from all of you about the issue.
I think Michael mentioned the phrase a Gordian knot a number of times when he was speaking, and that's really the issue, is that there are so many strands that are involved in this, and if one of them doesn't work, none of it really works. Michael, maybe you want to speak to the architecture of that.
Well, I think there is that, but I think it comes down to transparency of process. So, for example, I came from telco to start with. You can always listen to somebody's call, but it had to go through due process. So if government's making legislation and people are trying to listen into your call for whatever reason, we need to have some form of transparency around the process, at least, even if not going to tell you, But in an ideal case, they'll be telling you we are listening into this data transaction or whatever. Alternatively, you do it with citizen empowerment, going, I want the government to listen into this part of it because I've got nothing to hide, you know? So I think that's the frontier that we're moving towards. And I think, at least in Australia, they've done a very poor job so far around that. So it's the great undiscovered land, I think, from a legislation point of view, but also I think from a technology point of view, it's equally as complex.
Thank you very much. Kelsey, I think what Professor Watai is raising is that is perhaps that of enforcement in Metaverse. I mean, how can that be guaranteed?
Yes, spot on. It's an excellent question. I'm actually working with 3 legal scholars at the moment in investigating what's happening in this space, specifically in DAOs. And so, I mean, decentralized technology networks are definitely not beyond the law. There are tax and legal requirements on the ownership of tokens, the transfer of tokens as CGT events or capital gains events, as well as the registration of these entities. And then, of course, like you say, accountability, so arbitration, what happens when things go wrong, who do people kind of go after, or who's held accountable. And so there's this strange interface where some DAOs don't register an entity. They just have IP that's not kind of owned by any entity, and they try to remain kind of pure to the ideological vision of decentralization, whereas others very much are. And there's a number of legal sort of solutions surfacing. So some jurisdictions, such as Wyoming in the US, are saying that you can register there, but it's for a specific type of LLC kind of corporation. Whereas other DAOs are going after kind of unincorporated structures, such as Swiss associations, or a structure with kind of a legal trust registered in a different jurisdiction that manages treasury and these sorts of things. And then to the specifics of dispute resolution and arbitration, many DAOs are also pioneering their own solutions to this. So there's kinds of whole infrastructures of decentralized courts, which use the rules of the autonomous organization. So the rules within and between the participants of that organization to resolve disputes. And so what is argued in a very good piece of work, which I'd recommend if you're interested in more information, called DAO model law, is that a DAO must have an internal and an external dispute resolution mechanism.
Yeah, whether or not to impose tax or digital tax is a very important issue too in the legal world. Yes.
Kenty.
Yes.
You've been talking about the operating system, almost the operating system of the society, right?
Yes.
That almost replaces the role of market and money. Yeah. But listening to what other people say, the design of that is a terribly complicated issue. Having to address the diverse. I mean, the 2 dichotomies. I'm not sure if that's the right one or not. The nation versus the individual. Security versus interest. I mean, how can that? Who determines who designed the OS? Who implements the OS? What's the scenario for making that happen?
That's a really interesting question, and I think in regard, I think in terms of the open source development, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, those are examples of open source development, and it's only the autonomous efforts that is that maintains those software products, and I think that what Professor Watai questioned about the ownership. It's a really important question because there's an ownership of a project also, and I think the concept of ownership will inevitably change along with digital technology. What digital technology means to the society, and for example, in Metaverse, if you design a Metaverse in a specific way, and if the world is unsynchronized, then you can, every participant can own everything locally, so that they have the similar experiments. Similar experiences. So the ownership, the concept of ownership will change inevitably, and and to think about it deeply, I think we have to go back to the origin of the concept of ownership, which maybe which anthropologists tell that it's a sacred concept, because if someone owns something, they have to protect that thing. And I think it's close to the concept of the ownership of the project. So I hope in a grassroots movement, people themselves own the project and maintain, and they propose, and things like that. I'm not explaining well, but that's what I've been thinking.
Thank you very much. I think amazingly, with your help, I think I can give all of you 60 seconds last comment each. So, but before that, let me ask Kim and Michael about the control issue. I think your framework, from if I heard you and read you right, try to give as much control to individuals as possible. Am I correct in that? And how are you going to harmonize that with a lot of national security kinds of issues that are very practically there?
Well, standardized is the framework basically for protection of your data, and also how you share it. So in that world, the technology itself is designed two ways. The citizen can choose to share the data with the state. Alternatively, if the state wants access, they have to actually request it, but also the data owner can see that their data is being accessed by whom. So it obviously integrates into identity frameworks and everything else like that. So that's how it's designed. To circumvent that means we actually have to unbuild certain aspects of it. But the whole idea that there should be trust and transparency on both sides, but that is essentially use case driven. That's not built into the technology. The technology will essentially protect your rights based upon how you've said that, and there is no back door to the architecture, because otherwise what you have is you could have essentially what's happening at the moment on mass here with our government, at least anyhow, is that there's a whole bunch of listening going on, and that does not foster trust of the citizen in the government. And obviously we have capitalistic endeavors as well, which want to profit off data as well. So this is trying to even the playing field. So that's the philosophy behind it. And that's how I can see it could work. There's no reason why it can't work that way. It really depends if the government want to tell the citizen they're listening, and why. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, only 50 seconds. 50 seconds each. Final comment, whatever you left out. Starting with Kelsey.
Thanks. Yeah, I would just say that these spaces of innovation and experimentation into decentralized digital infrastructures and alternative governance and ownership mechanisms around both data and then data kind of value flows can't be ignored. So they have real world implications, and as we've touched on, they'll have legal and tax and policy implications, as well as national security ones in some settings. But I think they're such a rich environment for further scholarship that I would just encourage people to inquire of them.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Rika-kon?
Thank you. I think it's a question of defining national security. So restricting competition in order to protect national interest is seen as a problem, not only in the cyber world, but also in a normal trade, ordinary trade. So the security that should be at the foundation of digital trade. When I say that, it's about reducing the risk to the users of internet. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Kenji?
Yes. I talked about the destruction of the triangle, the between the among the specialization money and the state. It's a really difficult question how that can be achieved, and I think we have to look at the what happened 10,000 years ago, where the hunter-gatherer society, out of hunter-gatherer society, appeared to the state, and we will witness, I think, the reversal of that history. And you all gave us really good things to talk about. Think about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim and Mike.
I think if you want to think about our technology, I would suggest you think about it from the Star Trek perspective, wherein there are all these different communities, if you will, that wanted to use their own technologies, their own languages, their own tools, and still work together in a federated way. And to do that, they had to have a universal translator. And essentially that's what's been built. So I think when we're looking at it from a business perspective, that is what is an imperative for business to be done on the, in a level playing field in the digital economy, is for there to be a universal tool that enables you to keep your favorite toys. And all our tool does is make sure that you play well together.
Well, thank you. I really like to thank all the panelists for the great interest. I mean, the topic was actually quite diverse, and yet I think there was a common tone to this. I think we have identified a few critical issues we need to keep on researching and developing to make this cyber civilization is a nice place to live. So thank you very much for the contribution. I really look forward to working with you on these topics.
Thank you. Great pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so
very
much.
much.